Hello, how are you, Megan?
I'm good. Let me introduce you. Welcome everybody to Behind the Biz. I have one of my best friends, Chris Luebke, here. He is coming to us from Colorado in Denver. And Chris and I met in Las Vegas, where he was a stage manager for 8 years for Zumanity, and right?
KOOZA.
Well, KOOZA, but
Oh
not
yeah,
in Las Vegas.
in Vegas. Yeah, in Vegas. Yeah, those three.
And then went around the world with KOOZA as a stage manager. And then now you're a producer for live events, for conventions, immersive dinner experiences, $1 million
Right.
giant A-list entertainment events. And I have a full bio on the description, so you can check that out and see all of his credits. Full disclosure, Chris and I were roommates for 3 years in Las Vegas. Feels like 10 in a good way.
Seems like so much longer.
And we're world traveling buddies.
We are.
I know. You need to come back here to Houston and live here.
Oh, okay. Come back here. Like I've never actually been there except one time.
Yeah, but it's still coming back.
Okay, yeah. Come back and like live with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's full house right now, but yes.
We have an extra bedroom, so you're welcome to come here instead if you need
I will.
a little break.
Gosh, it's so good to see you. You look
so good to see you. Oh, thank you. I know. I was decorating the office in preparation for this, making sure this is a good like deadline. I was like, okay, I need to get stuff on the wall. I have new artwork coming, so don't get married to this, but it'll be in the black and white realm. So here we are.
Oh, but I like those. They're very you.
The ones I'm getting are going to be good too.
Can we just talk about this for those that are watching the podcast, this video cast, as opposed to just listening to it? Let me describe what is essentially Chris and I in a nutshell. Because I compare your aesthetic a lot when I'm like, oh, Chris would love that because it's like gray or blue.
Blue, yeah.
Or
like shades of blue and black, yeah.
Tinges of color, very right angle, super contemporary. And then, I mean, you can look behind me and there's like a unicorn and a Christmas tree. And, there is gray, but then that wall behind me is a giant purple wall,
I mean, just your blouse, right? Like it's inorganic and no. I remember when we were looking for clocks for the house that we lived in.
Yes.
And we were at like, I don't know, Michael's or one of the craft stores and all those clocks. And at the same time, we were both like, what about this one? And I was pointing something that was like clean and like easy to read. It might have been square. And yours was like pink and like had little like frilly designs. And like the clock was like this big. And it was mostly wall decor and like a clock. Like that's what it was. And I remember like that's the pinnacle of like the.
Yeah. That was the prime example of our aesthetic, I think.
Totally.
But surprisingly enough, we lived together so well. And who would have known that we would travel together so well? We went to Paris and London and Iceland, along with tons of other local trips. And despite you not allowing me to take a pillow to Europe.
No.
Well, he was so upset by this, guys. Like, very, very indignant that I wanted to take my own pillow to Iceland.
Did you bring it or not?
No, because you wouldn't let go of it.
Right. Like, why would you? Like, they're gonna have pillows when you get there. We stayed in a lovely Airbnb.
Yeah. There's all of this video too, if you're friends with us on Facebook, of looking at the warmed floors in the Iceland condo. And
right.
I think we had an argument at Versailles over art.
Yeah. We had been traveling for a few days at that point, and it was sort of like the married couple, like, it was something totally stupid about like, you were so upset that there was contemporary art like on the grounds of Versailles. And I was like, this is great. Like,
I hated it.
Oh my gosh. I remember the Iceland thing. And they were like, do you want the GPS for the rental car? And we were like, I think we're going to be okay. And I was like, well, it's like $40. I was like, let's just do it. Like, thank God.
Well, he said we're like, we're really great at directions, which is true. Like we have a really great sense of direction. And he was like, do you speak Icelandic? And both of us just stared at him. And he said, you know what? You guys are going to need this.
Right.
And nobody said like, hey, in Iceland, there's no right angle turns anywhere. There was only roundabouts. Remember?
Right.
And so it was like, take the fifth roundabout, fifth exit at Harvard.
Right.
And I think we did the National Lampoon's thing where we went in a circle at least 3 or 4 times. Like, what? And then they had the GPS set on don't take freeways.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. We were down some dirt road for like a long time, and I was like, I think this is wrong. Like, I mean, it's really beautiful out here, but like this is taking us a really long time.
And Iceland's just not that big. I feel like we should be there by now.
Right. And like, the days are short. So we were like on a time crunch. We woke up at like early, and it was like just getting light at like noon. And we knew that we only had a few hours of sunlight. So like, yeah, I totally get the GPS for sure.
Absolutely. And also, if you can, travel with stage managers, because he creates Excel sheets for your day's activities with options. Like, these are the things that are open. We could do A, B, C, D. If we do this, this is how much time we have. And we had that you made it a giant one. I mean, it was like a fold out.
Yeah, we bought it with it's color coded. Right. We knew everything was in the time zone it was. We had like open space. There was free time. Yeah, it was totally, absolutely. I do that for all the trips that we do now.
It worked out really great because I feel like when you travel, sometimes you can get overwhelmed because there's so much to do. And so to wake up and be like, what are our options today? And then it was lovely. So FYI, if you don't ever know any stage managers, travel with them, find one, travel with them. I want to back up to way before you and I met, which was the most fabulous day of your life, of course.
100%. I totally remember that day too.
You do?
I do. Because I was like new at KOOZA. All right, this will be real quick. I was new at KOOZA, and I was like an ASM. I didn't have much responsibility. It was like my first or second day. And Brett Palmer was like, why don't you like go like meet people? And he was like, get out of here. Like, leave the office for a second. And I was like, okay. And I was like, deer in the headlights, like shy, reserved, introverted, and like was like marching downstairs to like where you guys were all sitting. And I like just sat down, and you and Kelsey were like in the middle of dinner. And I was like, hi, like sort of presented myself. I was like, here I am, and that's totally the first day. And it's funny to think like if I hadn't had done that, if Brett hadn't had like forced me to do that, get out of my comfort zone, what would have happened? How would my life be different today? So,
well, it would definitely be less magical.
All right. So before I met you.
Oh, yes. So before you met me, you were not really looking at doing theater for like a living. You went to college for something else in like the larger scheme. Correct?
Sort of. Yeah. So I went to college, and I entered college with the intention of getting a chemistry theater double major. So it was always those two, right? It was always those things. And like in high school, I like loved math and science, and I was really, really good at chemistry. I liked thinking about how molecules acted, and like specifically inorganic chemistry, which is more math based. I got a little fuzzy in some of the organic stuff because it's a little bit more like, well, if this molecule and this molecule hit together in like this configuration, it's different than if they, and I got a little like, this is too ethereal for me. So the inorganic stuff, it was all about the math. And it wasn't, and then theater was always there. Like theater, I had a couple of scholarships. So like that was always kind of like, I was going to graduate with a theater degree no matter what. And I really loved doing theater. It was, and in high school, like I think, sort of listening to the interview you did with like Kelsey and Mark, like theater is the place that the kids that don't fit anywhere else and sort of end up. And like I wasn't entirely athletic. I certainly wasn't popular. I wasn't one of like the cool kids, and always sort of struggled with some identity stuff. Part of that was like, I'm gay, don't want to talk about it, so it's like there was a lot of like, in your teenager, like trying to figure out where you fit in life anyway. So and I remember like going into theater in high school because I tried out for a show because like all of my friends were doing it, and I was like, okay, well, if my friends are doing it, then I guess I'll go too. And I ended up like not getting the part.
Ah,
But they were
really?
like, why don't you be the stage manager? And I was like, okay, like same thing. I was like, whatever. Like all my friends are here. It's an after school activity. And same thing, like that was like totally fortuitous, right? Um, that experience really changed my life. So like I ended up stage managing all the rest of the shows in high school and then went into like college knowing that I was going to be a stage manager. I was like, I'm not here to be a designer. I'm not here to act. I'm not like, there were kids that were sort of like playing around like, oh, I'm gonna get a theater degree because it sounds like fun. Like I was like, no, I'm like on a mission. Like I know what I want to do. I know what the end goal is. And yeah, so I ended up going to the University of Denver, which is a small liberal arts school, which is mostly known for business. They have a really small theater program, which was great for me because it was liberal arts. So we sort of tried everything. So there were some days I was acting, some days I was making costumes, some days I was hanging lights. So we sort of learned the whole trade of theater, and as opposed to sort of like, oh, cool, like you're a designer, you're going down this one specific track.
Yeah.
And I was the only stage management student. So for me, it was really like fortunate because like I had my choice of shows, right? Like the faculty would come to me and be like, cool, like here's what we're thinking about doing this year. Which shows do you want to do? And I was like, this one, and I'm going to skip that one because I've got a bigger chemistry project or something like that. So I was able to sort of pick and choose. And then I became sort of the mentor for the other kids that ended up stage managing those roles because I was the only one sort of knew how to do it. And the chemistry, so going back to the chemistry thing, so I was always sort of chemistry, and it was always like, cool, like I'm not going to make money in theater. Like I knew, and I never was going to be a starving artist. I was just, that's like not like my MO. So I wasn't going to make it.
It's an understatement, I think.
Right. Like, and like, I remember going to like New York with my parents. And we like, friend of a friend, somebody worked on Hairspray, the musical, and we like didn't see the show, but we ended up going backstage. And I remember kind of like, this is so cool. Like, this is how it works. And being told, this was like I think I was still in high school at this point. And I remember just in awe of like how it all worked. And it was super, super cool. But I sort of came out of there being like, oh, like, I don't want to live in New York. I don't want to deal with the subway. It's cold. It's expensive. Like people work really, really hard to create art there and continue to do so. And like, thank God that those people exist because like our industry wouldn't be what it is without those people. I just knew that I wasn't going to be one of those people. Like I needed a theater that was like going to be nice and built for me. And like, so when we went to see a Cirque show, right, I was in Vegas again with my parents. We're on some vacation. And I remember like we went to Mystere. And I remember like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because it was like such like an impactful experience to like watch something that was like so avant-garde, so like out there, all these moving pieces, and we were sitting pretty close to the stage. So I remember like, people like crawling over you, and then like that bungee act where they're like just falling on top of you. Like it's powerful. It's cool stuff. And I was like, this is what I want to do. So like I went into college like knowing that like I was going to work for Cirque. Like that was the end goal. I wanted to be a stage manager at Cirque. So for me, like all of my experiences were sort of like, cool, like how can I make this show better? What ways can I make tools? And in school, you sort of like, pick and choose what things you don't want to do. And I realized that like I didn't love rehearsal. I didn't love like blocking notes and watching the show come together. Like I watched this, like the pieces all come together, but like sitting in a rehearsal room, like just scribbling notes and like reading line, like an actor's like line, and you're like reading it back. Like I was always off book. I like made somebody else do it because I was never focused enough to do that. Keeping track of props, like there were like too many like minutia details that I was like, nobody cares. Like this is gonna happen. And I like had beautiful paperwork, right? Like my paperwork was gorgeous, very aesthetic, right? It was a whole thing. And then I remember like when I actually ended up getting an internship at Cirque, like I remember John Gruber, he was like, you know what? He's like, any monkey can do paperwork. But he's like, to be like a really good stage manager, you have to like have those soft skills. You have to sort of know and understand who your players are, what they're going to be, what their day looks like, and how you can sort of best facilitate. Like we're here to facilitate a process, getting from A to B. And it's not just about writing the paperwork. It's about making sure that people trust you and understand you, and you can get your point across really efficiently. like those were like the more important things. And that was a really like important life lesson to me. And I was like, you're right. Like I spend like a lot of time thinking about what this paperwork is, and it is pretty, and it's nice to like look at something that's nicely designed and is easy to read. But it is more about like who you are as a person and what skills you sort of bring to the table. Anyway,
that's true. I think that your mind is very interesting because you are able to do both of those things. And by both of those things, I mean, have an efficient process of stage management. But I feel like your people skills, and especially over the years as you've gained more and more experience, your people skills dealing with the different departments is really quite excellent. You know, you stay very calm, which I think is hard sometimes, especially in high intensity situations. KOOZA could be especially dangerous. You know, we have rehearsals and moving parts. And so to stay very calm amongst artists that are not always so calm
or don't speak the language, or right, they're new to the show. And right, like some part of our job as stage managers at Cirque specifically was like you're teaching gymnasts to be performers, right? Like gymnasts, they come back and they miss a move and they mess up, and they you know, immediately their face shows it. They're like, oh, like I didn't hit that. And I was like, no, like keep smiling. Like this audience, they want you to do well. Like they don't care what they saw. Like if you go and do one flip instead of two, like they're thrilled because they've been drinking and they're just excited to be here. Right.
That's
so
true,
like
and
if you're
it's
teaching them to be like excited about and turning them from like acrobats into artists, right? We called them artists because like that's what they were. Like they're creating art. And there's a lot of technical things moving on kind of around you and in you and like above you and, you know, off of you and like all this stuff. But right. So it's taking all those pieces, which is why it's Cirque, like the stage management team sits on the artistic team, not on the technical team. And that was like one of the big interview questions that we would always ask people coming into Cirque was like, do you find stage management to be more technical or more artistic? And the answer is it's kind of got to be both.
It does.
Because like the technicians are there to make sure that all of the equipment is working in the way that it's supposed to work. And then they sort of like hand it off to stage management and the artistic team to sort of make art with it, right? Like, so like there was a fine line between like, I'm not there to manage, and like this is different than like Broadway or like regional theater, right? Where the stage manager is in charge of the technical crew. Like this is, I didn't like none of the technicians, the sound technicians, the audio technicians, the automation, like none of them reported to me except within the 90 minutes of that show. Which is when I was like, cool, this is what I want it to look like. And there, can I do this? Yes or no? Those were kind of the answers. So when things went wrong, and they did all the time, which is like sort of like why we're there and why there's 7 stage managers on KOOZA. It's
Seven.
like seven, right? Like, well, because you're managing, it's not just stage right, stage left, right? You're managing 13 floors, 3 basements, 2 grids, right? I mean, it's crazy. There are people all over the place. Yeah, I mean, so like you need all that stuff to come together all at one piece, and like that in sort of like with stage management.
Whenever you were an ASM, and then did you come straight to KOOZA or did you go to O first?
So I was at Zumanity as an intern, and then I was on KOOZA as a backstage manager, a BSM. And then so I toured there for a little bit, and then I came to KOOZA as an ASM. Then I went to O as an ASM, was there for 2.5 years, and then came back to KOOZA as a SM.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about tour, because that was really fun. You were also very tall for that tour because y'all were in Japan.
Sure. It was like a celebrity.
I just remember you being like, I keep hitting my head, but the food is amazing, you know. How did you like touring? Like as a person, like I'm a nester. I like to nest and have all of my things. We discovered that when traveling together. I pull everything out and put it in the drawers in the hotel room. And you're like, why? It just needs to stay in your suitcase and it's all ready to go. And do. And I'm like, no, I want it all out and I want to be able to grab it.
No. And it's funny, like I travel a lot now for work, right? So
yeah,
there's a very like fine line about like people that unpack their stuff when they get into the room and people that don't. And like I will like leave most of my stuff in the suitcase. It needs to be able to be contained. Like, and certainly not putting stuff into drawers. Like I'll lose something that way. And then like the next question becomes like, how often do you let housekeeping into your room? I'm like, every day. I need fresh towels every day. And Jim makes fun of me and he was like, can't you just reuse the towel? It's like better for the environment. I was like, listen, I had a long day. I just want a fresh towel. Like that's the end all be all.
But you like touring, yeah?
I loved touring. It was such an amazing experience. And like, if I was a young person or if I was talking to a young person that was like considering going on tour or not, like the answer is yes. Like, absolutely. Like if you have no mortgage, you have no kids, there's nothing to tie you down. There's nothing like for sure. If somebody's like, hey, do you want to come travel the world and I'm going to pay for it? The answer is yes. Like, absolutely. I worked incredibly hard, right? Like those teams that are on the touring shows are working all the time. But I was just talking to Meredith about this the other day, and I was like, there's so much life that happened in such a little amount of time, because you're working 6 days a week, you're doing, 2 shows a day, there's rehearsals in the afternoon. So like they feed you, you're all like living together in this like apartment that's sort of curated or hotels. You travel together. The one day off that you get a week, you're like going off and like, we're doing wine tours, we're doing this. So like it was like every single moment was with these people. And so you just get to know them really, really intimately. And then you become like a family, and for better or for worse, right? Like families fight and there's good times and there's bad times. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to talk to that person today. And like, there certainly like the drama of the backstage show, like could be its own reality TV show. But at the end of the day, like we were all family, and we would all put each other's like life on the line because that's what it's about. And like it was really important to bring to sort of arrive in a city, like knowing that people were sort of excited to come see us, right? Like there's something that's really energizing where you would sort of spend like 6 weeks, and I was on a big top tour, right? So like we would sit down for like 6 to 8 weeks. So we were living in apartments, we weren't living in hotels generally. And we had the time to sort of explore the cities and kind of get to know it. So like by the time I sort of left some of the cities, I was like, I know like my favorite restaurants. I know like where my grocery store is going to be. I know like you sort of get to know them. You end up sort of making some local friends too along the way. Yeah. And there's some really, really incredible friendships that I made on tour that I'll have, for a long time.
I think that's something that's very special about circus specifically,
Sure.
But also for Broadway and regional theaters. But there is something about, when I started in Vegas, I didn't know a soul. And I think I've said this before, but Victoria, who was the company manager at the time, they said, do you know anybody here? And I'm like, I don't know anybody. It's just me. And she's like, oh, well, don't worry about it. We're your family now. And truer words were never, ever spoken. Like, right. Because everybody and on tour as well is coming from all of these different places to put all of their talents into one bucket for the world to see, you have this built-in family that absolutely, even though we're all now flung on different areas of the planet, I feel like I can call or email or talk to somebody anytime, from being at Cirque or any of the shows that I've worked on. And I think that goes even double because you had Vegas and you went on tour, which is a whole different set of people usually that do cross over.
Yeah. They cross over a little bit. Yeah, but they are separate a little bit. And like there is like a lot of camaraderie that comes in that. Because Vegas in and of itself is a difficult place to live. It's very transient, right? Like you and I would experience that. We're like, even when we were traveling, people are like, oh, where are you from? And they're like, well, I'm from Houston, but I live in Vegas, even though we'd been there, for years and years and years. Like it was like the home. I like owned a house there. You owned a house there, right? Like but you're never really like from there.
They're unicorns.
It's very interesting, right? And there's so many people from all different walks of life. And Cirque is interesting. I was talking to Jim about this the other day. The Cirque is interesting because you're putting like incredibly creative people in kind of a boring job, right? Like we're doing the same show every single day. And it does become, it's not boring. It's monotonous, right? It's static. It becomes like, okay, cool, I'm doing this again. And like, even when you're operating, this was a big thing when we were like teaching the interns, right? Like, oh my gosh, we're going to do a show. And we're like, yeah, like, but the show is like when we get to relax, like we just get to do the show. Like the work happens before the show when we're doing trainings and rehearsal and getting the lineup set and stuff like that. But when the show actually starts, everybody's like, I'm just gonna, it's like A to B, B to A, it's just like the dominoes fall and like, we're just chugging right along, the train's moving, and and then you're being backstage and you got your track and everybody's you see the same people at this certain time and you're gonna know like when you're gonna catch people, and like the show is like the zen moment of your day, which is not the way that it is in my head in like on Broadway or in regional theater, where like the show is like that's where it's all at. So there's a difference when you're doing the show over and over and over again. And like when you're in college, you're like, oh, we're going to do the show again. And you're like, oh, this is like the 6th time.
Yeah, you have like
at KOOZA, right. You're like, this is the 600th time I've seen this week, I mean, and that's interesting too, because like even as a stage manager or calling stage manager at KOOZA, like I would notice something different about that show every night, right? Like something you're like, I've never seen, do they do that every night? And then you're paying attention and it keeps it more interesting. And I think I did the tabulation. I think I actually watched that show. Like I called that show like over 1,000 times, and you see something different every time, which is fast. Like that's why Cirque is so magical, is that you can go back over and over and over again and have a completely different experience.
I think I was working at KOOZA for 3 years in wardrobe next to the heads department before I realized there's a fish hat. And I was like, what is that hat? That's a cool hat. And they're like, Megan.
Is that one of the captain of the boat? Yeah. Right.
Did you just add that? And they're like, not even a little bit. It's been here since the beginning. And I was like, well, you moved it. I've never seen that. But there was always different things like that where you're just like, what? Oh, well, that's cool. So where do you go from? I mean, we had this conversation a lot because we lived together, and we had a lot of time before the show started, before we went into work, to do freelance projects, to work on ourselves and do boot camp and, all of these fun things. And at some point, most of us choose at some point to branch out. And when Cirque is the pinnacle, when you're younger, right? And it's a very comfortable job, usually. It pays really well. It's amazing people. And so I think there's a lot of trepidation about moving outside of that bubble. You chose to do so, and now you get to do kind of what you did at Cirque, but with different shows and different formats. And some of those are very exciting. Also noted that because you were with Cirque, you also still have access to really crazy talent.
They're my friends, right?
Right, they're your friends. And so I remember you doing a phone call and being like, I need somebody that can do a really crazy aerial act, because
I was like, I just need something. I need something acrobatic, and it needs to be next week in Greece.
And so what happened? I mean, that was an insane. Can we just talk about that for 1 second? Because I think as a producer, to know that you can pull off this act while everybody around you was like, what are we doing? And then for it to come off was so cool. What wound up happening?
Right. Well, okay, so let's go back to like leaving Cirque, because getting to Cirque and sort of arriving and then sort of being there for a little bit, because you're right, like going back to like college when I was there, it was all about like, I want to be a stage manager at Cirque. And then at some point you sort of arrive, right? And you're like, here I am. And for me, I was 25. I was calling arguably one of the biggest shows in the world. I had millions of dollars of equipment and people's lives at my fingertips, right? Like, and it was fun and exciting, but it was also monotonous and sort of boring and sort of like, cool, I've got to do this again. And it became a job, right? It became a job. And it, like, again, never boring, but certainly static. And you sort of, and people like other Cirque of that family, they end up doing like, like midnight cabarets, and they do freelance shows, and you did like, your makeup and photography projects, and like people start kind of branching out, and there's this sort of this like weird kind of subculture of art that happens in Las Vegas, which is very interesting and intriguing and all that stuff. But a lot of those people, because you get the same thing, you're like, it pays well, you're doing well. But yeah, I remember like we talked about this, right? It was like, here I am at 25, and we made jokes about this. So, like, we're at the top of our field. Like, what do you do from here? Like, where do you go? Like, what's the next step? And I remember getting a little panicky because I was like, I don't want to get stuck and feel like I'm not growing and continuing to challenge myself and learning something. And like the easy way to do that is just switch shows and do something different, right? So like, okay, well, I did 2 years at Con, now I'm going to do 2 years at Love, and just sort of like, you just sort of change up the scenery. But at the end of the day, you're sort of doing the same thing, but with a different set of people. But the skill set's the same. But how do you continue to grow your skill set? So yeah, so for me, I ended up sort of making the leap into corporate events. And I did that basically because I got panicky, and I like started shotgunning resumes out there. And I was like, anybody that will hire me, I'm realizing that I don't want to stay here forever, even though I love it. And I ended up at Freeman, which is a company that does like big expos. And I worked for their audiovisual division. So I was in charge of doing all of their big like conference stage shows. So these are like galas and keynote speakers and product launches and stuff like that. And it was on sort of the more technical production side. And I went from a company that like really loved the culture and the employees, something that was much more sort of corporate driven. And I learned a lot. And I mostly learned that I didn't love that job. And I needed to find something different. But I sort of learned the job that I wanted to do, because there were times when you, as a production manager, you would hire a show caller or a producer, and they would come in, and you were like so thankful that they were there, because they could take some of like the artistic pieces and working with the executives off of your plate, so you could focus on some of the technical issues. And I was like, that's the job I want. So yeah, so then I ended up leaving Freeman and just going freelance, and was doing that for a long time. And then we moved to Denver, and then I ended up getting a job here in Denver with a company called Unbridled. And they are a event production firm that does lots of sort of corporate events. So like this was sort of like the new way for me to sort of express myself artistically and creatively, but also like do all the things like logistically and management oriented and people oriented. So my job as a producer now is to sort of like come to a client and be like, or a client comes to us and, hey, we want to do a show. And my question always to them is, why? Why are you doing a show and putting on this meeting for X number of people instead of just sending out an email? Like, why are you bringing people together? What's the value in that, right? And that sort of changes the way that they're going to approach the meeting. And then it becomes like more about the story. What's the story that you're trying to tell? Like, who are the people that are going to come to see this? Are these your customers? Are these your employees? Are these people that you want to work with? What's the end goal? Are we trying to impress them? Are we just trying to get information to them so they can do their job better? What's the end story? And then, so we focus mostly on corporate events, but you're right. And the one in Greece particularly was a more social event. And we do some of those other things too. How do we continue to engage people that are in these live environments? So the one in Greece was for a private family. They were doing, it was a birthday party / wedding / anniversary. And yeah, like I got brought in sort of late in the process, and they were like, we need some sort of art. You did a really great job on our corporate event. We need something that's going to be kind of cool. Go.
Showstopper, here you are.
Oh yeah, and like that's always like, what's the wow, right? Like, what's the wow? And before you can have a wow, you have to have a why. So that goes back to the story. What's the story we're going to telling? Are we in Greece? Are we embracing that theme? Are we embracing that? And we ended up doing like this, like big kind of Greek sort of festival, and we had like, there were statues, and there were artists, and there were places like the kids could go and they could write like ancient scrolls. And the food was all themed, and we're looking at this sort of from an event arc, like as a whole experience, like what's the experience of an attendee. So we had set up like a little shop in one of the villas where all the attendees could come in and they could pick their toga for the evening. So they didn't have to bring anything with them. They're not pulling bed sheets off. It was all sort of provided. So they could kind of go in and sort of pick your costume for this costume party. And yeah, so I ended up finding through Erica. She was like, I've got this other friend, her is also named Erica, in Italy, and she does amazing work. So I reached out, and for me, that ended up being a one-stop shop. So like as a producer, like it's all about like using those connections sort of to your advantage. It's all about networking. It's about who you know. And it's not about pulling favors. It's about sort of like massaging wants and needs, and then like how can I help you in return, right? So like you give me this, I give you that. Like it's a trade. And I think the family, like the Cirque family, is like always very sort of willing to sort of get out there and give those sort of perks. And I hired JJ and the Wushu troupe to come do another show the next year, right? Like same thing, because I knew somebody. You're sort of like, hey, I think I've got someone that's got a skill set that's sort of interesting. Let me get them on the phone. We can talk about it.
But that falls into that because we're, on a machine, it lends itself to people wanting to find creative outlets outside of the show because it is a job by then for a lot of them that have been in it for 10 plus years. And
Right.
So doing things like that and branching out and getting to do events and show off those skills and work on different ones, as well as getting paid to do that sometimes, is really fun. And it almost kind of enhances that sense of community, Let me show you what is out there and the people that I know, and you kind of forget how awesome some of them are.
Totally, yeah, we're totally jaded, right? Like you look at some of these, and like when we're reviewing acts like in our office, and now like we sort of watch some of this stuff, and I'm like, I've seen that. And you have to remind yourself that like, but the attendees haven't. Like the audience that's going to come see this has never seen a sand artist. Like you're like, oh cool, like I've seen it. It's kind of it's a fun gimmick, and it like you have to sort of remind yourself what it was the first time that you saw it, like how cool you thought that was, right? Like a chair balancing act, or right. And they're not all just acts. Sometimes it's just like the way that and like now it's like a lot of it's more PowerPoints and like videos. Like how can I use video to inspire an audience? Right. And like as an editor, like those people, like they watch the thing over and over and over again. They get like the song drilled into their head, and like I never want to hear the song again. But like for them, it's a job. It's like it's a workflow. But you sort of have to remind yourself like that this is really exciting. And even at Cirque, and now like when I'm like doing shows now, like instead of like watching this, like the show's going to happen regardless if I'm paying attention to it or not. So I like try to pay attention and sort of like watch the audience, right? Are they as engaged as I want them to be? And are they, and you capture these moments of like, they're smiling and they're actually listening, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, like look over there. And like, even at Cirque, right? We would see that. And like, I would go into the house and when the bird was flying, and everybody is just like totally in awe of like watching the stage move. And you have to sort of remind yourself that like what we do is really, really cool. And that was what I heard about leaving Cirque, is that like Cirque was sexy, right? Like to say like, oh, I work at Cirque du Soleil, it's like a sexy title. No matter what you do, right? Like even like people are like, oh, do you perform? And you're like, no, I can't do a cartwheel, but like here I am.
So true.
And like we weren't involved in the creation of those shows. We weren't like, we were operating them. And it was still sexy. And I remember like you felt proud to wear like the logo, when you got your like 1 year anniversary jacket, like people would like at the grocery store be like, oh, can you get me tickets? Like,
always.
Like always, right? Like it was just nice to be sort of recognized and feel valued. So like leaving that, going to a company that's maybe not as well known, there's a risk there. But I think it's a risk worth taking, because like you sort of have learned that you can do it, and you're never really sure like what's on the other side of that hill, right? Like what's gonna arrive, and to sort of learn like if you, like for me, like if you sort of arrive in a job that you're not loving, then don't stay. Like find something that like does bring you that passion, that does bring you that joy, because because you have to love what you're doing. And like, that's always my mantra. Like this has got to be fun. Like the second it stops being fun, like I'm out, I'm going to find something different. I said that at Cirque. I said that at Freeman. I'm, my current mantra, my current role, like it's as long as it continues to be fun and there are more good days than there are bad days, like
Right.
there's always something else you can do to earn money.
Yeah. I mean, what do you find this year particularly, obviously, has been hard.
Yeah, totally.
And, your business is slightly different than a show, but at the same time, it's the same because it's usually about the gathering of human beings in one place and somewhat close together. So I know that you've gone into digital stuff a lot more this year, but what kind of keeps you motivated during this time?
It's tough, right? It's really hard. Yeah, like our company pivoted hard to virtual. And we were lucky enough to sort of develop a platform that allowed attendees to sort of get together. And then we're constantly talking about what the engagement is. But yeah, like at the end of the day, during the pandemic, you're like, how do you engage someone that's sitting at home in front of their computer, usually at their dining room table, like by themselves, right? Like it's not fun. You're missing out all those like social interactions. And like, that's what we're finding is that people are really, really yearning for that live face-to-face meeting, right? Where it's not even like the meeting itself, it's the stuff that happens after the meeting where you're like at the hotel bar and you're like running into old colleagues and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you. Where do you live now? How's your life? What are you working on? And like our jobs are like to connect like this person and this person, let them talk and share ideas so that hopefully something in their company can like come better, right? It's all about sharing ideas. So like, how do we continue to share? And yeah, I mean, it's really, really tough. So how do I personally stay inspired is you sort of have to sort of find the outlets, right? You're watching like a lot of YouTube videos I just found this really beautiful, mesmerizing, like tango performance. And you're like, this is, it's just stunning. It's mesmerizing. And like it's like that, those are the kind of things. And then like Hamilton, right? Like we were watching Hamilton and I think I told you this, like I couldn't finish it. Like I struggled. Like it's supposed to be this like beautiful, like amazing piece of theater. And I'm sure it is in real life. But on the screen, it didn't translate for me. Like it didn't speak to me. I felt like I was watching a TV show. And at the end of the day, it was me and Jim. We were on, the couch sitting together and I wasn't in an audience. You missed the oohs and the ahs and there's
just an electricity.
No, totally. Of that shared community experience of like everybody's doing this together. And I feel like that's sort of like what our job is now is like, and where I find like the joy and the passion is taking an audience and like giving them a moment that like eventually turns into a memory, right? Where you're taking something that is very like ethereal and you're taking them out of their day-to-day normal life, good or bad, wherever they are in their headspace. And then you're presenting them with a totally alternate reality that they get to live in at Cirque for 90 minutes for a show for a day, in a virtual environment. And for one of these virtual shows, I'm taking 30 minutes of your day. Maybe you learn something, maybe you not. So sort of all in an effort to sort of just change the way that you think just a little bit. Whether that's escapism to be like, oh my gosh, I just needed a reprieve from the stresses of my day-to-day life. Like, I think that's the value of theater, right? It's all about storytelling and empathizing and sort of like seeing something else from somebody else's point of view, and living through their shoes, even if that's not an experience that you'll actually get to live in.
I have a very interesting question from Joe Walsh.
Oh.
So one of the cool things about streaming live on this platform is people can say hello and ask questions. And so Brian Wiersma says hello. So does our friend Anna Rhodes in France and Dylan also. And Joe had a really interesting question. He said, I love Chris's take on new management models with people coming together with no bosses. Very much Tony Hsieh.
Yeah.
The deliverer of happiness. Has he explored that more as a producer?
So I'm in an interesting role now, because I am a boss in sort of some ways. In other ways, like my whole philosophy is like, I'm just there to get people to do their job, right? And to make their job easier. My job is to make their job easier and then get out of the way so they can do their job, right? It's like connect this dot and this dot. You guys work together, go. I'm sure you guys are going to do great. And then sort of like overall oversight. So that's where I think like the magic of my role is now. And I'm at a company now, like I was just telling my boss this, I was like, it's so nice that like, you're not constantly micromanaging me and you're not like always like over my shoulder. Like he's sort of there when I need him and sort of supporting, and then he's not. Like when I'm sort of in the grunt and the day-to-day thing. So like, he's always like an open door when we sort of need things there. And the Cirque model is sort of that way for at least like, in stage management, right? Like we had sort of everyone reported to a GSM. Joe like was my boss at that show at O. But otherwise we worked very much as a team, right? So there were team decisions, and there were certainly decisions that came from the top down, and we're like, great, we're gonna go with that. But Joe was really good about coming up to us as a team, and we had a really great team, right? That was like Christy and Sarah and Alana. Like we had a really, really awesome team, and I think some of the other shows were envious of us, of our time at that period. Maybe that's me just being biased. I thought we had a great team. But we would sort of make decisions, and Joe would come to us and would sort of play things out and be like, well, what do you think is going to be the best way to do this? What's going to be that way to do that? And we would sort of come together as a team. So I think it's all about the collaboration. And that's the only way you're going to get innovation, is you get two people that have different opinions and they start cross-pollinating. It was one of the things I wrote down about and Joe specifically, you may or may not remember this, he used to play catchphrase. Or we used to play catchphrase, right? He would like the catchphrase game. Yeah, the game that like beeps and you have to like try to get people to guess words. And like it was always like super fun, and we always look forward to it. And it wasn't until like a year into it, we were playing this game, and I was like, this is fun. And we were certainly like on the clock before the show started, sometimes between shows. And I remember Joe was like, you know why we play catchphrase, right? And I was like, because it's fun. Like, why would was there another answer? And he was like, no. He's like, because I want you guys to start thinking like each other. And it's sure enough, like we got better and better at about like the way that like Alana would explain something. I knew what she was going to say, which made us better at our job, right? It made us better stage managers. So when something did go wrong, you knew what the other person was going to do innately, so that you could do something else over here. So we were all working together as a team. We weren't having to like over communicate. Things weren't getting dropped. Balls weren't getting missed. It was a really clever, sneaky Joe Walsh.
Sneaky Joe Walsh. Rachel Permort says hello too.
Oh, hey, Rachel.
She's out here in Houston now.
Oh, that's fun.
Going forward, I mean, I know that obviously we can't plan too much into next year. I feel like 2021 is this, everybody's standing on one foot with like a toe out, like just waiting to do something. Is there anything that you're kind of looking forward to next year as far as certain events coming up or more travel? I know you travel a lot with Jim, which keeps you guys very refreshed, or you traveled more before, obviously, the pandemic.
Right.
And you're a foodie and like cooking and doing all of those types of things and enjoying stuff. Is there kind of a list that you have running in your head of things that you're looking forward to?
Oh, I mean, so from like a personal level, for sure, we've got like trips like booked like out the wazoo, like things that we weren't able to do, things that like we were like hoping to do this year that weren't able to do. So like we really wanted to do like a Croatia, Slovenia, sort of northern Italy trip. I would love to spend some more time in Italy. I would love to go back there 6 months, maybe a year.
You did a foreign exchange student there, right?
I studied abroad there. Yeah. And it was amazing. And I haven't been back since, which is crazy to me that happened so long ago. But yeah, so I would love to like settle down and sort of live in another country for a while. I think that's the only way. You can go visit and you sort of get a sort of brief kiss on the cheek of what their cultures look like. But when you actually start living there and you start shopping at the grocery store and you start, learning the culture and figuring out who the people are and what they like to do, and you have sort of more time to sort of like be grounded and sort of like wake up and sort of smell the coffee, as opposed to just like running out the door and like, okay, but we got to go do the touristy thing and see all the museums and all the churches. And there's a different like calm that comes in living in a place.
Yeah.
So I think that is certainly high on the list. And And then as far as like professional work stuff, like it's all about live events. Like we are really, really optimistic that live events will be booking stuff as early as May. I think the vaccine news is incredibly encouraging, incredibly positive. Jim, my boyfriend, is a physician, and he is hoping to get a vaccine before Christmas. So that's crazy. That's like 12 days away. So like it's good that like things are starting to roll out and like things are starting to change. We've got a lot of clients that are sort of looking at like June and beyond. I know that a lot of the hotels are starting to fill up, which is good for as far as like corporate business. But like that starts regenerating sort of like personal travel. So I think like sort of this time next year, things will be on the up and up for the events industry and then thus the theater industry.
Gosh, I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, even having the school, I'm on call for some filmings this week because they can't have the live, but it's just not the same. And so I'm really hoping that by the summer, next year we'll be somewhat back into creating live, beautiful art. That would be amazing. Joe said, thank you for that memory. I miss catchphrase. Things have become much busier and we hate that we don't play it anymore. If anybody has not played catchphrase, this game is awesome. I think we did pretty good at it at the house. We played a lot of games.
Not like the O team. We were like on fire. So good. We were so good.
I love that. Now for some random questions.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. So if you could have dinner with 1 to 3 people in the whole history of the world, I obviously am included in this, but you don't have to name me. Who would it be and why?
Okay, it's not dinner. It's afternoon tea, and it's going to be with like all of the greats, right? This is like Glenn Close, Maggie Smith, Judi Dench, Meryl Streep. Like I would love to just like sit at their table, afternoon tea, eating little tea sandwiches, and just letting them commingle. I think that would be fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Oh, now if we could get all of those people to do a show together, how amazing would that be? Totally. Maybe somebody will send this to them.
Totally.
I know. Downton Abbey was one of our favorite shows. I still haven't seen the movie.
What are you doing with your life? Like,
I know. I got to watch it.
So
I own it.
You own it? You haven't watched it yet?
No, everything is relegated to like 2-hour increments when the 2-year-old goes.
Well, that's a bandy list of things to do tonight, and you can call me. I might watch it again tonight too. I mean, and along those lines, like the Crown. The Crown is so good.
Yeah, we're watching The Crown right now, and I want them to explode. I want Margaret to have a hissy fit.
Right.
Like I don't think I'd make a very good
royal.
Walsh
was the one that turned us on to Downton Abbey. I remember him coming back, and he was like, I'm watching this show, this British drama show, and I was like, that doesn't sound very interesting. And I remember you and I watched the first episode together, and I can't tell you how many times I've watched that first episode with other people getting them also hooked on the show.
I have the ring. It's a ringtone. The
opening credits.
The theme song. Yeah. It's so beautiful. It's amazing. Okay. I digress. What is your favorite ice cream?
Chocolate chip cookie dough.
Really?
What do you mean, really? What were you expecting? What was it going to be for you? What did you think it was going to be?
I don't know. I guess I thought it was going to be like cookies and cream, maybe.
I mean, for sure. Like anything with cookies in is good. Right? I have a total sweet tooth, but like it's the cookie dough that I'm after. Frequently, I will make a batch of cookies, and I don't really want the cookies. I'm in it for the dough.
Well, yeah, you also came home and were like, Megan, I found this thing at Trader Joe's that we have to put on everything, and it was the cookie butter.
Cookie butter, yeah.
So
that was back when it was like hard. You had to like ask behind the counter because like people were like stealing and getting in fistfights and stuff. Like that was like cookie butter era. It's easier to find now.
Hate? What is the food that you hate?
Oh, I'm not sure. I have a hate food. I have a funny story about hate food, and I changed. So I used to like not love Brussels sprouts, right? Like It's just, they were steamed. Like I can picture like the container that my mom used to like make them, like that they smelled bad. I think my mom was watching, so like no offense, like they just weren't good. And it wasn't until like much later when we started like roasting them, right? Like you get the caramelization, all the flavor. So like Brussels sprouts are now one of my favorite things. And then for my company, like this year, like they did like, instead of like a Thanksgiving like gathering, they did like a virtual Thanksgiving like cooking show. And so I was like one of like the cooks, and I made these like crispy Asian Brussels sprouts, which are key.
Yeah, I
Key.
like
I don't
that.
know. We eat a lot of things.
We used to do Iron Chef too.
We used to do Iron Chef. That was super fun. Where like, yeah, we would like, somebody would draw an ingredient and we would all get a course, and you'd have to make a dessert with avocados or soy sauce or something like that. Like that was fun for sure.
Yeah, that was definitely fun. You had mentioned kind of a motto earlier, but is there a motto that you find yourself kind of living by these days?
Have fun, be kind, use good judgment in all things.
In all things.
All things.
Also, let me express to everybody a phrase that you say a lot that I now have imparted all of the time to people, which is when you are trying to do something and it's not working, Chris would stop, back up, like put his hands together and be like, you have to be 10% smarter than the thing you are trying to do.
Right. 10% smarter than the object you're dealing with.
I can't tell you how helpful this information is, no matter if I'm opening a pickle jar, if I'm dealing with my 2-year-old, which hopefully I'm 10% smarter than him. But, trying to do anything that is frustrating, I'll be like, I have to be 10% smarter than the thing I am trying to deal with. Totally.
It's good advice.
Yeah, right. And to watch Hoarders to make yourself feel better about
right. Like, okay, we're doing okay. We used to do that a lot too. Like, okay, we're like
doing okay.
Our life is on track. We're doing just fine.
I'm so happy that you decided to say yes and join me for this. I think that your path is interesting. It's a little bit, out of the ordinary as far as how you got into doing what you're doing, and that you are very, very good at it. And if people have a chance to reach out to you and ask you questions, you can either message me through here, or you can find Chris on LinkedIn. You're active on LinkedIn, aren't you?
I am active on LinkedIn. I have gotten rid of some of the other social media just because I needed like a better life outlook, and it's too much. If you haven't watched The Social Dilemma, then like
I have.
It's a scary realization. So yeah, I'm taking a pause from some of the other social outlets.
It's a good thing to do, especially the holidays, just really kind of refocus. And
it's so nice. I've done so many more audiobooks now, because you're like, oh my gosh, I have like hours back in my day.
I can't say that yet, but I think whenever Aiden is like 5, I can say that.
Yeah.
I think about that, like how many more things I can read. But it's okay. He's cute, so we'll keep him. It's fine. But I think that if people have questions about doing this, you have and are still working at the top of your game. And I think that that's important, and sharing that knowledge and how you got there. So for all you young organizers out there, or people that want to stage manage and aren't really sure what is out there in that realm, this is the guy to talk to. So thank you so much.
Totally. And I said, I'm always like an open door, right? Like it's very intimidating to reach out to people who you think are like so much more qualified than you, that are so much better than you. And you find yourself sort of in that weird imposter syndrome. And I find myself in that place sometimes too, but like, just reach out, where you never know like where that connection is going to be, where you're going to meet somebody that's going to give you your next job, that's going to make the connection to be like, well, we're not hiring, but have you looked over here instead? Or, or we're not hiring now, but 6 months to be like, hey, like, remember like that guy that we talked to? Like, he seems pretty smart. I wonder what he's doing. Like those things I love when people reach out, because I think it's a good way of just sort of saying, hey, and I'm interested in putting your face out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just, like you said, you never know where it leads. Right. You could meet the next person you might want to mentor, and be like, you actually have some really great qualities. Let's work on that,
Yeah.
Let's or I see that you seem to be more interested in this. Let's talk about, that avenue. And
this is why I make you wear makeup to the grocery store, because you never know who you're going to meet.
Right. Feather boas. However, here in Humboldt, Texas, outside of Houston, feather boas would be looked down upon more than in Las Vegas. But
makeup. You need makeup at the grocery store for sure.
Yeah. Makeup and a cute mask. Oh, I miss you so much. And I'm so thankful to see your face today.
Yeah.
And I will call you soon. Like I said, reach out to him on LinkedIn. And thank you so much, Mr. Christopher Luebke, a.k.a. Christophe from Paris.
Thank you.
Let me go here and we'll end this fabulous thing. Oh, hold on. Wait. We have somebody that wants to say something to you.
Okay.
Rachel says, thank you for sharing. I'm so glad I got to watch and listen. Take care and be well.
Aw. Bye, Rachel. Good to hear from you.
All right. Bye, everybody.